I'm here with a very special guest. I mean, what can I say about this guy? Multi-talented, just doing great work out there in Iowa. I know he's got some residencies in Rhode Island as well, in Providence, but you're going to hear a lot from this guy.
What's good? What's good? It's good to be here. Yeah, for sure. Definitely excited that we get to do this interview tonight. It's definitely something that's been on my bucket list, and I appreciate all the love that you've shown as well to like the career that I've had as well, and like diving into that and like caring about doing this interview tonight. So yeah, hell yeah. I'm chilling.
Appreciate the love as well, man. October 11th, 2022, you released your debut album, Second in Broadway. Let's talk about your debut album, creativity behind it.
I lived in two different places where it kind of came to me in the idea. And then when I was out in Rhode Island, it had all kind of formulated. And it's actually kind of like a precursor to a bigger album that I've been working on for a few years. But with the travel and everything, it's like I wanted to really put something out. And I felt so inspired on the journey that I had. Second and Broadway to me was the very first songs on that were started on Second Street. And then I ended on Broadway Street at the end of where I was living at the time. And like I had a lot of fond memories between that to the next, kind of like incorporated other things. And like there's pictures in it. It's kind of like a collage when you zoom in of like some of the places that we had went between Second Street and Broadway Street over like the 2 years that I like kind of manifested on that album and cut through some of like the topics. And it was a deeper piece to me where I felt like I was taking strides, and I wanted to like document that was like an era. I didn't want to just let the album overhaul it. And like I felt like Second and Broadway was like super special to me. Recorded it in like a ton of various places and states, to be honest. Anywhere from like Iowa, Chicago, recorded a couple in Minnesota, one in Denver. I recorded one out by Boston in the car. And like we've like recorded in cars while we've tracked and stuff when we had like people from the label. So it was kind of like a culmination of like destinations. I feel like that was like the general theme of it. And that's why there was so much like variety, and I kind of like categorized it in that way. And then I did the final master at the Wu-Tang studio out in Worcester, Massachusetts. So like the final master was done out there, and like I really loved doing that, and like getting access to do that and like having the time there was super nice. Shout out to Jimmy Kang for allowing me in the studio for during that time period. I met them out there, and that was a great endeavor as well. So Second and Broadway had like a lot of various places in it. That's kind of why I chose like a destination of a name, stomping ground thing of like, this is where we've been and where we're going to next.
In creating your debut album, what was your favorite song that you created on that album? My favorite is Ultraviolet.
I liked Ultraviolet too. Fun fact, I wrote Ultraviolet inside it was a $60 million castle in Connecticut. I wrote it and then recorded it in the theater area there. And like I was doing some media work for them. They loved the recording stuff I was doing, and I worked with some different talent out there. So I got to record it there. And then my other engineer was a part of that. And like I recorded that reel that I put up while we were tracking, because we were actually using the space for the show at the time. And I was like, well, shit, I'm going to track this before we got to go forward and use this in the show. And all the cameras are up. I'm like, I don't want to let it go to waste. We're waiting anyways. So I kind of hopped on and just got in mode, and my artist Shia mix and then track that out as well too. A great engineer, and like we've worked together in the past for a while, and he helped me out there for a lot of different projects and stuff. So yeah, Ultraviolet was a really fun one. Culmination of like two pieces, beat switch in between it. And like it's something I really have attempted recently of doing like voice switches. I think it's really important as like an artist to just not get caught up in one box, because you can rap the same, you can get the same flow across, but when you actually go through and like try and develop different sounds and different approaches, it just adds variety into songs. And it's like I like ear candy moments, and I think it's part of the audio engineer in me. Like I want to catch the listener's attention when we switch up. And when we do certain things, and especially during projects too. Yeah, I really got to show you the second album. We definitely have to talk about that more in the future. I'm going to be dropping that second album actually on February 16th in less than a month. So there's a second album that's kind of being like announced out and worked through right now. Very excited to bring that one forward. And it's kind of been like I've waited on these projects for like 3 years basically. And I just kind of sat and worked on my craft at the same time, and then did my engineering business and kind of went to school for certain things in the past as well, while kind of finishing up the first year of that tape, and then the 2 years of travel and stuff. So, but it was good. I'm like getting my feet and my grounding to drop this, and like I feel like I really have some good support and good people behind me, and like we've been growing, so I'm grateful. for the whole journey. So
You mentioned about your favorite song that was on Second on Broadway, your album. What was the hardest part in creating your album? I know you mentioned about, your artistry, but if you could describe yourself as an artist, what artist would you describe yourself as?
that's a good one. I'm gonna say the hardest part of that self-criticism. That's my biggest thing when I create pieces is like I feel like I always want the next song to be better than the last one. And then you get in that mode where it's hard to keep cutting and finding where what fits. And then the criticism doesn't just come from self-criticism. It comes from what you might think is the best. Certain listeners might like more in certain spots. Because I've plotted songs that I thought were going to be greats and all these different ones, and the reactions were different to songs that I wasn't even predicting. And so like the self-reflection part is really hard when you take a time as an artist. And if I were a type of artist, I don't want to label myself as anything, but I feel like I guess if I were to give myself a classification, I would say like a rap connoisseur. Like I'm a type of person who wants to like touch multiple different lanes and multiple different things at once. And I think that like fine taste is like really important as an artist to really like slow down. When you put your heart into something, it's different. And like people can tell when your heart's not in something versus when it is. I would say that like I'm an artist that's a connoisseur and speaks from a place of like a heart. And I try and like tell stories that are able to be able to be adapted and relatable to certain things. And like I dive further into certain stories and stuff in this second album. There's a lot more conceptual pieces and a lot more like first and second person talking that I kind of went into. And so Second and Broadway and like Ultraviolet, what we had talked on earlier, the voice switches and stuff. I've attempted certain things like that. And there's certain songs where like there's different personas and there's different things that I try telling stories on that like I've personally been through. I've had people in my circle that have been through them and like real life scenarios that I don't feel like we talk about. And like I wanna talk about those things and in Ultraviolet, like I literally said, I was like, they got PNB over waffles with a couple hollows. Look where that money follows. Should FBI try to kill Jay Prince? Look where that money follows. And like, so we talk about like so much of this different shit and like hip hop and people like going through all these different things, but it's like we forget our history as we grow. And I think that that's something that I don't want to like let people forget is like what hip hop has been, where people have came from and like where these artists have really came from because we've changed over time how we perceive like art and also like it's the streaming industry changed everything. And then also the artistry that's changed in hip hop and the progression. Like a lot of it's moved away from like people are looked at as goats of our generation and stuff. People were literally clowning on Nas before 21 hopped back on that. And like, I've known Nas was raw, but a lot of these people won't appreciate some of that because they like music they can turn up to. They like certain vibes and like, oh, that's cool. I love that stuff too. But it's like, there's certain music that's timeless to me, and I want my music to be timeless and to have a meaning behind it. Like it like it's like Kendrick, right? Like I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna go like bump out To Pimp a Butterfly at the club. Like obviously I'm not gonna go do that. Like there's certain pieces that are profound, but when I listened to them, it was lessons. It was things that I needed in my life that I wasn't given. And I was blessed recently when I was out in Worcester. I went to one of Capadonna's shows after doing some mixing with them. That day out on the Worcester studio and doing some stuff for Big Nate out there. And right after that, the next day, Deckhead came in and played me 2 of his newest albums, and we did like an album release party. And like we got like 4 to 5 songs in, and I was just like, man, this dude is just sitting on so many classics. I'm like, these are lessons that like most of the shit that nowadays these kids listen to isn't that. We don't hear these things that people are talking about. We don't get to do that. So like I feel like lessons are so important as an artist. Like I want to teach lessons. So that was a profound one, but that was a deep question. So yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking that. That was a good question.
You talked about your debut album just now, but your second album, tell us about that. What can we expect off of your second album?
I think the second one, it's a longer project for sure. Like that's a whole, like obviously that's like a first telltale. So there's 14 total on this second one. The album's called Mandela's Machine. I kind of wrote this piece and it started as skits a few years ago. And we recorded out like certain vocal takes. We recorded certain interactions. And then I took so many renditions of it. Like, and I created this concept of, I started getting into super like time travel shit when I was younger. And I loved comics. I loved certain things like that portrayed that Nelson Mandela and the Mandela effect. And like, I know a lot of people don't really know too much about it in depth, but there's like a lot of people who believe that Mandela had died in like a certain era when realistically it wasn't until way later. So then they coined this as like the Mandela effect. So I created a concept of like the Mandela's machine being where I can go back and live out lives and see certain things of like deja vu moments of where life could have gone or where things could have gone. And some of these stories that I'm telling are from first and second person of like where I've been afraid I could have went wrong. And I feel like it was a dive into my persona of what my fears were and then what my aspirations were equally. So it's kind of like two sides of the coin in this second album. So the multi like personality things and like some of the things that you'll see are a lot deeper of concepts and a lot deeper of meanings. And I think I dive deeper into personal stories. I didn't do a lot of that. Like I feel like Jon Snow, I kind of dove into it in like street poetry, kind of just like I kind of gave you a glimpse of that. Like I have bops and we had turn up ones and stuff on that last record, but this one just kind of changed me a little bit, you know? It's made it really interesting for me. Sorry, I was making sure my interface wasn't on. It's just been an interesting journey. So Mandela's Machine was like a 3-year concept. Coming up with some of the concepts and approaches in these songs was something that I've really like sat on. And I've had some good creative help in this. And like I've got some features on there and like we have some really great skits that kind of like portray stories. I think I pulled a lot of inspiration behind some of like my favorite artists of all time. Like my lists are different than a lot of people of like who my favorites would be, where they stand in certain regards to me. And like I think that there's importance behind as an artist taking the best things that you like and then emphasizing what makes you on top of those things for what you appreciate about these artists. Like taking your top 10 list and then rating the things that you like the most out of them, being like, okay, I like how he does this. I appreciate the persona he has when he does this. And it's diving into that a little bit more to me as an artist and what I kind of did in Mandela's Machine, diving into my persona of who I was, where I've came from, and then also places that I've been and places that I've been close to being, you know, and like I could have went right in a lot of situations. I went left. And that's like a real thing that we struggle with as humans, and like diving into that, like that fear of leaping at your dreams, that fear of taking the wrong move or taking the wrong step, and how one decision can change your life forever or it can make your life better, you know. Like I don't know, there's just there was a lot of profound thinking behind this second one into like deeper concepts and in character developments as well too. Second and Broadway was a phenomenal tape too, and like that just represented an era to me, and like that's a timeless record too. Like they're so different, and I want to keep doing that as an artist. I don't want to just be an artist who does one thing, an artist who's just in one box. Like I've planned out different albums already in certain regards, and yeah, Mandela's Machine was a universe to me. It's something that's actually being like, I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm gonna be doing like vinyls, and then I'm gonna have like an 8-page comic that we kind of like wrote out recently and like etched out over like the last 6 months that I've worked on, kind of like a rendition one where like when we buy out the tapes and certain things, I'm going to send out a comic. I'm going to send out like signed certain things on like our website for this second one. So it's like more personalized. We had like our first merch drop and stuff. We had dropped some like Medusa tees. We had dropped like certain things, but I'm kind of doing more personalized. And then we have like some one-of-one like jackets and stuff that we've like worked on that I'm kind of ready to roll out too. So yeah, it's been a journey. And then prepping for this too. And like the release is going to be really fun for me, and like getting to kind of see what people come out of the woodworks for it. And we're kind of attempting a lot more like Spotify playlisting. We're attempting pushing this a lot more. And like the first one is kind of like getting our feet wet and seeing what organic following we kind of still had before we start going forward. And like I wanted that project to be for like the day one fans and the real people, because I haven't dropped in like 4 years, and I made music for 10. So it's like I've been a musician. My father was a musician, and so that kind of played into where I started getting into it. And then the recording thing just really like intrigued me, and I started studying the shit out of it, went to school and learned a lot of the back behind the scenes to get to where I could mix my own shit. And I think that was like a big step for me as an artist. As an artist, controlling your creativity and being able to record when you want to and when you need to and mix and master that is a blessing. And then like don't ever sleep on that, because like you can't paying for studio time right and left, doing all these things, having to go plan out your creativity at somebody else's location is just not as open. And like a lot of people would say that like, oh yeah, I like going to the studio to do that. And like you can prepare for it and everything, but it's not the same as having that creative control because you can see what records you like versus not. What sounds good when you really start doing your home testing? What sounds good to take that to the next records? Because obviously there's places I would record, like recording in the Wu-Tang studio. Check It was recorded in the Wu-Tang studio. That was the only one out of Second and Broadway that was recorded out there, but the rest was mastered. Actually, the rest of the whole tape was all different locations, and Check It was the only one. That was produced by my best friend Corey Jones, and he's a really great not only activist out there, very well connected. He connected me with like Tiara Mack, and I worked with her over that, and she's a really big, well known senator out there. Everybody knows her as the twerking senator that like blew up on TikTok. So we all like work together out there, and he's a great producer, and he's been going crazy on the MPC recently. I get like 10 beats from him a day now, and like I feel like we kicked up our inspiration when we were out there, and like I'm proud of his growth too because he inspired me to get the Wu-Tang connection. And I guess I'll talk about that because I feel like that's something like interesting to like just kind of say off rip, how I kind of like met Wu-Tang. I was in Massachusetts at the time, and they had a roll-up a pop-up for one of Capadonna's new strains. And so they had a pop-up at a dispensary, and I basically saw Jimmy there, and I knew who he was. I listened to all this shit. Like, dude, I was a big fan of Chambers. I was a big fan of like everything that they had done in their solo albums. Like I watched Deck, I watched all these different guys grow, and like RZA, I loved Ghostface Killer. Like I was huge, right? So I knew exactly who he was and like what he had played in the role. So when I saw he was there, I was like, yo, I want to set up a meeting. So I started talking to a couple managers I knew there. I was like, yo, like I'll wait after if I have to, bro. So I remember I waited like 2 hours, just kind of like standing by the door. Like, I'm gonna get this meeting. I'm gonna get this meeting. I'm gonna get this meeting with this dude, and I'm gonna tell him what's up. Because I know I got potential. I know that I'm a great audio engineer as well. And I know that I can benefit wherever I'm at. And it was kind of like me trying to just take a leap of faith. You know, I was there, miss 100% of the opportunities you don't shoot. And so I was like, I'm going to shoot that shot. I waited like almost 2 hours, finally got the meeting with him, got my Instagram to him. And then I followed him on Instagram and everything. And I was just telling him, yeah, I can come out sometime. And they told me where like their studio was located. And then he told me like, yeah, I'll hit you on Instagram. I didn't get like a follow back or anything right away, for like a day or two. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go down. I'm not going to let this go away. I was like, so I told everybody on my page, I was like, everybody go tag him and tell him that he needs to work with me and go spam his shit. And I got a bunch of my fans and a bunch of my people to just go spam the shit out of him until they were like, you need to work with Clayy. You need to work with Clayy. So then like 2 weeks later, I get the meeting finally. And then I showed him a bunch of my mixes and some of my personal music, and he loved it. We shook hands on certain stuff. They gave me keys to the studio. I mixed up for Nate. I did some stem mixing for Capadonna as well too. And like I got some one-on-one time with Deck and like watching him work, and getting advice from Jimmy was good too. So I'm grateful for the opportunities that I had and like the places I spiraled since then. And then getting out there, and I did some work for Monster, Roku, and on top of that, Portia and Scarlett. We did a lot of different things, and some of that was from media work, some of it was from cinema work. I'm really grateful that I learned a lot of great things out there, and for the people out there. Yeah, that was a long tangent, but that was a good question. So we spiraled out.
You mentioned about your enjoyment in music. Obviously, you mentioned about your inspirations in music throughout your family. I know, yet you also mentioned about a top 10 list, but if you had to pick like a top 5 of who are some of your favorite artists.
1 to Nas, 1 to Lupe Fiasco, 1 to Cole, 1 to Kendrick. Oh my God, that's so hard. This is like very difficult. I'm just thinking of like who I think would fit in that top 5 of like right now for all time for me. Tribe Called Quest is 5. Anything from their catalog just always hits to me. And I grew up on like rapping on those vinyls, and like some of the shit that I did, like I'd flip over Illmatic on vinyl when I was a kid and like rap on the instrumentals and shit. And like I got super into it at a young age. So like vinyls and CDs. I remember like as a kid, I got Food and Liquor as like a CD that my uncle passed down to me, and like I'd open it and that shit had like a broken glass already, and he'd be like, yeah, I listened to it 6 times, but you can have it. And then I'm literally walking with like a CD player and shit, and I'm like, yeah, this is lit. Like that was way before iPods, all that shit. And so like I feel like CDs were huge. If I had to go in deeper, like I can't really put, it's hard with like the top 5 because like I would put Wayne up there too, but it's like the catalog he had and what he did for the game. Obviously Kanye as well too. it's just like putting that top 5, even top 10 is so hard. But I did love Kanye and like the records he's made. Like we need to all stop holding him to a regard of like thinking that he's more than just the artist that he is sometimes too. We idolize him and we pump his ego, I feel, as creatives and people to make him into that. His creative genius was withstanding. After 808 and Heartbreak, it changed the whole game. And so did anything that he did, from College Dropout, Late Registration. Like you can only say so much about the shit after that. Like everything else, it's like, yes, that's groundbreaking. We can't take that away. Most Def as well, I'd put on that list. Puff Daddy.
Obviously, you dropped your first album. You're gonna be dropping some new music before you drop your second album. Let's talk about some of these tracks. Gift, True Times, and Die by the Sword.
Die by the Sword was recorded with one of my close friends, Hollow Tips, and we're actually finishing out a music video for that right now, and that's gonna come very shortly. Die by the Sword was recorded. My original verse and my hook was recorded actually in the parking lot of a dispensary in the vehicle. I just had this SM7B right here, and I had my fucking laptop on me, and my interface just threw it up on the dash when I was in passenger. And I just recorded it right there. And then we got back, and I was at my crib in Iowa, and Hollow Tips had came over, and we recorded it just in my living room. And then we mixed down the stems, and I did the final master. That final master was actually done at Wu-Tang's studio. That was supposed to actually be on Second and Broadway, but I pushed that off because I was like, you know what, I want to consume this as an alone piece and build up on a video with this. True Times was written in Providence and made in Pawtucket at a studio out there that I had at the time. And Gift was actually made in Iowa. And Gift was it was a very like it was an energized piece. I feel like in some of these singles that I'm dropping, I endured a lot of different things. And when you travel and when you have a team that you worry about, it's like a lot of these pressures that come onto your shoulders with certain things. And like, so I feel like I got a lot of things off my chest in like these new songs. And like, it was really important for me to do that. So all 3 of those songs are really just major bops that I wanted to push out, and I've kind of been seasoning and like sitting on, and I'm going to continue building with. It's so important to me to get those ones out because they're unique pieces, and they each have their own different intent and different messages of each. And so that's kind of why I wanted them to come out as singles individually before that. And so that's why there's like a little 3-pack, and then leading up to it, I've got a lot of music in the catalog. And I think that's why I'm trying to push these and then build on these promotions a lot, because a lot of the time as an artist, especially as an independent, you can build on these songs and release them and keep promoting them out. And don't forget to keep promoting them out, because I want to release the content and then maximize in on some of the promotions, because the quality is there. And then it just becomes about the execution and making sure that we can keep promoting and building on the numbers. Because on Second and Broadway, I think I made like 6 reels just alone on Medusa, and I made like 15 TikToks, and I stream farmed those. So what I did was I made like a bunch of TikTok accounts, and I had like studied the algorithms and just been like, okay, so these right here, I'm going to make a reel on each of these, or sorry, not a reel, a TikTok on each of these, and see what the numbers do on each of these. I had some that did certain numbers in certain areas, some that didn't. And then I documented and kept the ones that I liked. And then I just kept branding out Medusa, and the Medusa's numbers started getting bigger on reels just whenever I'd tag it. So like, that's just, I guess, plays for independent artists, and like staying on top of your Spotify playlisting. That's my goal with these next 3 singles, is to really dabble into that and see how the playlisting goes out with these singles, and dive into this and dive into all that. But I love all 3 of those songs, and they're really personal to me. And I'm putting pressure all 2023. So that's the important part.
Out of those 3 songs, which was your favorite to record?
I'm going to say Die by the Sword. I think it was the energy that was there. I think it was the presence that was there. And then the place that I was in my head after like certain things. There's certain energy as an artist that you just can't replicate. And I think that I just can't replicate that one. You know, like that was something, and that song's about a year and like 2 months old right now, actually. So like, it's not something that like just was recorded, but to everybody else, it's going to be new. And that was like a big thing. And I knew it was ahead of its time when I made it, and I still marinated on it. True Times and Gift were recorded in the last like 3 to 6 months. So they were like a little bit newer of pieces, but I knew that Die by the Sword needed to be a part of, if it wasn't Second and Broadway, a single before we pushed out what Mandella's Machine's going to do next.
Your label owner at Most Iconic Records, your executive audio engineer. When did you realize that you wanted to get into the music industry? When did you realize you wanted to get into the artistry or do the artist part?
It started with my buddy Corey Jones, that's out in Providence. He's been a really great hand and a great advisor among that, and he helped me found what Most Iconic was. Originally, it was an entertainment company that we had started as. We had people slotted like Mark Battles, and we had FBG Duck. And FBG Duck was our big one that we threw out in Iowa, and he was huge. Known around Lil Durk's crew as well. They kind of had beefed, and it was really big in the Midwest. And we had sold out that show and everything. Rest in peace, Duck. He had actually gotten killed this last year. So we were doing that. And then we released merch lines and certain things. We were artists as well. So it just kind of like it had developed. And then we had kind of backed away from the merch lines. And we were so focused on getting through college and getting through our careers. But at the same time as my artistry grew, I was doing audio engineering and I was working with all these artists. And I was like, man, all these artists are just missing keys that I have. I have these keys. I can help these guys get to these places. I can record these guys out, get them the quality they need and the opportunities by what we're doing already. And I know the business side of it. Like I've studied a lot of it, and like I've learned what it takes to just be consistent in this and have each other's back. So I kind of started getting into cosigns and then working with people on studio stuff. So it'd be more like recording based, where we'd be like, okay, well, we want XYZ for doing this, and I'll give you the free studio time, and we're going to continue working on this, and here's the connect to some video people. And it just kind of became connections. And I think that was what I've always had. It was connections. So I think that's kind of what got me into the music industry side of it, and being able to help manage artists and kind of like give them advice. And I'm not perfect. I've learned things from my artists just as well. And I think that that's something you have to realize too. And you know, I created a board for my label, and I think that's what's really important of the second part of it is board meetings and talking about certain things. Because if I'm going to be told no on a release, or I'm going to be told no about certain things that I want to do, I'd rather be told by a bunch of my homies, and then I can't just be directed and mad. Because when it's just me telling somebody, hey, we can't release your album now because we actually want to wait until this quarter to start this, and we're finalizing certain things with yours, and I want to make sure we get this video finished before we go about that, we vote on it. We're like, okay, is this cool? I know you want to do this. And his opinion, the artist always wants to have their opinion valid, and it's always valid, but it's like in due time. And we want to make sure that we're slow with how we produce certain things and how we market some of these guys out. We still have only dropped 2 debut albums past this point. And Legible's working on his second as well right now too. And he's done some really great things, and he's a great, talented artist. And he was the first one that I had actually co-signed. And I'm really proud of his growth and his consistency. He flew out to Rhode Island, and we recorded like 6 or 7 songs, like just on the rip, and had a bunch of fun. Got some MIR tattoos. I got it right on this arm right here. That was in my last reel I put up. But I got into the management thing because I love helping people, and I like being a part of people's growth.
Working with a lot of artists, what is the most challenging thing about working with an artist in the studio? And what's the most fun thing about it?
Best part, I think, is when the artist comes in a creative mindset and is ready with what they have. Because when they're ready with what they have, I like to think of what I'm doing as putting icing on the cake, as if I'm working on mixing down the stems, anything like that. I'm grabbing what you had originally. I'm grabbing what you want and what you want to see with your vision. I'm not trying to change it. I want to help you create it, but I also don't want to make it for you. You know, and I think a lot of the people, I think the biggest struggle I have is when people expect that the mix is going to save what you did in your performance. And the mix is meant to accent it. Like I said, it's like a cake. You got to put together all the fucking ingredients. Sorry, I'm sorry, but you got to put together all the ingredients, and then you gotta put on icing. You gotta bake it. You gotta slow bake it. You gotta make sure it gets golden on the edges. Certain things like that. And when you don't have the right proper preparation, aka the mix of the foundation for any of this, you can't do it. You can't do it if the art isn't there, and if the person isn't projecting and releasing their art the right way, then everything suffers. And I think as artists, we have to understand that the energy you put in your sessions regards what you get out of them. And I think that's one of my struggles. But my best moments are when artists come ready and when their energy is at 10, because it's like nothing's worse than when an artist is already on edge, or when they're not comfortable, because it's like, I can't give you that. I can't, like, I'm not about to rub your shoulders while you do that verse, bro. I promise you that. Like, I'm not about to rub your, like, you know, like, it's just like, it's one of those things that, like, as an artist, there's different approaches, but I'm grateful for that. I've learned those ins and outs, and like working with artists is always so great, and everybody's creative energy teaches me a lot. And like how people come into the studio or how they work in certain ways is a big part of that. some people's work ethics, I've seen great things that I like. And I'm like, well, I really like how he prepared for that. I have guys who come in and literally write down their lyrics and post them up and drop papers still on my ground. Like, and I'm like, that's so crazy. People still do that. Like a lot of people look at their iPhone and they struggle balancing looking at their iPhone versus looking at certain things. Like little cues like that all matter, I would say, as an artist, especially in a recording environment.
You mentioned about the recording side of things, and you mentioned about how you got started in the record label business and the business side of things. If your career wasn't in music, what do you think your career would have been?
I think that my career would have been in some sort of business management. Regardless, I think that I have that spark of like being a leader and a business owner. I would have been a business management, and it would have been leadership in some form or the other. Because I've always been that way and I've been driven like that. And like when I go towards something, I get so pressed on it. And I think that that's something that's been a blessing and a curse at times. But I think that if I wasn't an artist, I would still be focused on being an entrepreneur and being a business owner and management of some sort. It's just always been in my blood, I feel like. And that kind of came from, I think, the drive that I learned from like not only my parents, but like role models I had growing up.
You mentioned about your family having a big impact of you wanting to do music. When did you realize that you wanted to become an artist?
It was the culture of the music that I was around constantly. And like I was surrounded by so much. My dad was a rock musician. So he had done a ton of different stuff and traveled a lot when I was a kid. Great drummer. And it wasn't in the hip hop, in the hip hop centric thing, but what it was as a kid, and people always ask me when I started, I caught on the flows faster, right? And people started wondering, like my second song that I did, I actually chance dropped these songs Long Time 1 and 2 on Acid Rap, and then 10 Day. And Long Time 1 and 2, I had sampled something from it, and then it was my first song that I actually released and I went to a studio to do. And my flow was still there, but my lyrics weren't there. And people had asked me, hey, how do you hear where those flows go? How do you hear certain things? Well, my dad was a drummer. So when I grew up, I was doing homework and shit, and I could feel the kicks and shit from the floors. It's so weird to say that, but like I could feel how patterns were laid and shit, like just from the floors. I'd put on headphones and I could listen and just hear it more clearly. And I said, and I don't know what it was. It was like a Peter Parker, like Sonar Works moment. You know what I'm saying? Like where you could have like that Peter Tingle type shit, like where like just certain things like started clicking for me. And then like when I would start writing music, it became like addictive. And then I was like, okay, I need to be an artist because I'm addicted to this shit. And this is literally better than smoking some weed sometimes. And like, and I would get a different feeling from it. And it was a different release that I felt like I couldn't release in other ways. And that was that was something that I chased for years and years after, as soon as I found it. Yeah. And like the music thing was always fun to me, and getting involved in the studio, seeing my dad do that. Fun fact, when I was a kid, I was in a studio with my dad, and it was Budcat. It's a company that was from Iowa City. And fun fact, they coded and created on Guitar Hero 1, 2, and I think 3 is when they were cut, and they were a partner in Activision. And Budcat was in the title on both of those, and that was created in Iowa City. So they were doing a lot of video game testing back then, and I got to do sound effects as a kid for a Nacho Libre video game that they did on DS with my dad. So like I was in like studios and like in front of little Neumann mics and like and like yeah, like we had like certain roles that we had to play and shit. So like I had gotten into like the studio stuff at a young age and enjoyed like the studio time I had. And like I'd watch Danny Phantom outside of the control rooms and shit as a kid. So I think I always loved music, but then the artist thing dived in. And I think my dad wanted to see me go more into rock, but I just always had such a profound love for like rap and R&B. It was just huge in my life. So yeah, and I think that's my brother, my mom. I got so much of that different stuff from them. If I were to say mostly thankful, to give it up to my brother and one of my best friends, Corey, that I mentioned a couple times, because there's certain people in life that will shoot straight with you. And there's only certain people in life that will do that with you. And me having to learn that in this journey has been really hard for me, and really realizing certain people that will do that with you. And so I think my brother Hunter and Corey are the two that really just have my back through a lot of this like business and how I've maneuvered myself, my emotions. Cause as an artist, I get volatile, and in my emotional state, I feel like sometimes I go fucking like schizo, like Kanye, where I just drop off the grid and it just gets like that. And so I think I need those type of people in my corner to be like, hey, bad decision, good decision, like somebody to really just not feed me something or have a motive behind why they're doing it.
But what are some of your future goals that you want to accomplish?
I want to do my first 100,000 on some of these singles in this next album, and I want to hit 100,000 in some of these next projects. No matter how we market it or anything, it's a numbers goal of mine. On top of that, I want to plan out a tour. Because we've traveled around a lot as a group, and we've all done a lot of shows, done a lot of local ones. I've done a lot of showcases. I've done tons of different things. Think I want to start branding out our own, getting our own tour line set up and everything, making sure we have transportation to that is a big thing. Our merch, but taking our video and our media business to the next level, because it's not just recording anymore. It's grown so much more to the media that we cover and the certain things that we offer to people. And we need bigger not only locations, but our visions that we mapped out as a company are really important to us. So that in the future is going to be building out a lot of different ways to service media people and ways to help people build their careers and mentor them in that, because I got a love for teaching, I think, and that's in the future in my career too. So yeah, I think for life, I love making music, but I got simple pleasures as well too. I got a love for cinema. I got a love for teaching and elevating people. And I think what made me in the position I was and made people trust me was not gatekeeping in this industry. And gatekeeping is like a big thing that a lot of people do, and they hold back on information. They don't want to teach you how to do certain things. Me personally, nah. I don't want to do that. I want to help my people get to where they need to be. I want to make sure that they can learn the assets to help themselves to be stronger, because no matter what they do with that information, they're going to know where it came from. They're going to know who helped them get there. None of that matters. Don't hold people back for your own gains. It's not going to do any good for you in life.
If you had to pick an artist that you wanted to do a collaboration with, whether if it's in your top five, top 10, who would it be and why? Knowing that you traveled all over the world and whatnot, I know you've done a lot of work in, the Providence, Rhode Island area and Iowa. What's your thought on the hip hop scene?
Kendrick's cousin, Baby Keem. I would love to do a really like intense, like fucking horns and drums piece with Baby Keem. I just think that working with him and his energy and his like sporadicness, I think I can match it. I love the scene in Iowa that we have. Growing as an artist and seeing the scenes grow with you is really important, because I grew around the Midwest area. So I saw a lot of these scenes blossom into what they were. The Iowa scene has just grown a lot. The Illinois, Minnesota scene really been tapped into, I think, a lot of those scenes. So all those have great artists, very different too. Minnesota has some very unique creativity. And I think Iowa and like the Chicago area has some very like profound like lyrical ability out here. And I think that's different. And I think out on the East Coast, when I was up by Providence and like some of the Boston areas and stuff, there's a lot of R&B. There's a lot of that East Coast style. There's a lot of that drill. There's a lot of that Pop Smoke out there. Punjabi records. I mixed on different things that were really unique, like different rap styles and different languages. Like I think that it's really cultural out there, that it's not quite as good out here. And I think that comes with the territory out there and the amount of people who live out on the East Coast.
You live in Iowa. I know that there's lots to do in Rhode Island and whatnot, and it's got lots of things. Iowa. What's there to do in Iowa?
Iowa has probably one of the best Mexican restaurants that I will die and say that it will shit on Chipotle any day. It's called Pancheros. And it's just a Mexican grill that's just so good. And it's like a Midwest thing. And and like it was founded in Iowa originally. A huge restaurant that I'd take somebody to if I were to say, since I was out in Rhode Island, and I got to give a shout out to Onlyville Wieners out there, Baja's. Those were two great restaurants. Onlyville Wieners was crazy. The East Coast has really crazy like different things, like Mighty Mike's Pizza, slices of pizza out there, unique. In Iowa, I feel like the thing that I would do, and where would I take somebody in Iowa? There are cities like Cedar Rapids and like Iowa City. We have like a really big party university out by Iowa City that's not too far from me, that like gets pretty wild as well during like college season and stuff like that. So I think we're really known for like Iowa City and artists coming out in like Iowa City, Des Moines area. But like other than that, yeah, there's not too much in Iowa compared to like out by Chicago or Rhode Island.
Well, you had mentioned about, lyrics that you write about certain things that are happening in the world. How can hip hop be protected?
If we understand where we came from. Hip hop can be protected if we understand where we came from, because we can't forget where we came from by the directions of where it goes in the future. It's just like anything in life. If you want to learn it, you got to start at the foundation. And if you want to be the best at what you do, if you want to be involved in hip hop or respect it the right way, it comes with understanding where it came from.
Man, I'm glad we was able to get this interview, brother. I'm so proud of you and your success, and wish you all the best, man.
Thank you for having me. It was a good time. I'm glad we got to finally do this. You're a dope artist as well, and I really appreciate the work that you've done. I've watched a lot of your interviews on your Instagram already, so I knew I was expecting a top-tier interview already. You read me back the date of my album, and I was like, damn, I did drop that date. I was like, holy shit. But nah, it was great talking with you, man. I plan to come out to Hawaii soon. So if I come out there, we got a link and we just got to chop up sometime. Man. It's great doing this with you. And I appreciate your constant support. I'm going to be watching your career and hyping you up as well. So thank you for having me, bro. I appreciate you. It's love. Yep. Be safe out there, bro. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.